I took a vacation a few months ago where I disconnected completely from cell service for 10 days. All I did was ride horses, camp, and be in nature. My mind felt so refreshed from the break of a constant barrage of notifications and endless social media scrolling. I realized after I got back home that I very quickly fell back into my old habits of doom scrolling. I've been actively working to break the habit and cut down on my screen time. So today I'm sharing 6 strategies I use that have personally helped me consume less social media and have also allowed me to cut down on my screen time over the last few months. If you're new here, my name is Carly. On this channel, I share videos on personal finance. I talk about the business side of modeling, and I also talk about living intentionally. So if any of those topics stand out to you, feel free to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. When I approach my social media consumption more consciously, I subtly feel that much more in control. There have been times in the past when I've been so addicted to social media that I've spent hours scrolling. 1, 2, sometimes even 3 hours, only to realize that I was trying to fill a void that social media could never satisfy. And each time, inevitably, I would always come away feeling not as good as when I started, and that's both physically and mentally. This feeling was so subtle, but when I became more mindful about checking in with myself, I noticed I would feel worse than before I picked up my phone. Rationally, I knew that I was wasting time, but I kept scrolling because I was looking for the next piece of content that was as satisfying as the one that I came across 20 minutes prior. And then it just became an endless cycle. So my first tip is to delete our addicting apps, but only re-download them for a planned scrolling session. Some of my most addicting apps are Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. I don't have TikTok on my phone regularly anymore. When I have a free afternoon and I want to catch up on pop culture, I will download it and scroll for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes over an hour. And this is what I see as one form of entertainment. And then when I have had my fill, I feel satisfied that I don't need to scroll anymore, I will delete the app again. This one hack has been so helpful in cutting down my screen time. I might re-download TikTok every couple of days or even every couple of weeks. But scrolling on TikTok is not habitual anymore. I found that when I had TikTok on my phone, anytime I had a break in my day, whether that was waiting in line, on the subway, waiting for anything in general, my default would be to pull out my phone and scroll through social media, sometimes TikTok. Not only was my brain getting constantly stimulated with content, but I wasted a lot of time scrolling when I could have just let my mind rest and wander, or I could have done something else during that time. And now, because accessing TikTok is that much more difficult, it won't be the first thing that I reach for. And that really cuts down on the amount of time I'm wasting that I can be doing something else that benefits me. And even if I spend a couple of hours scrolling on TikTok when I download it, the times that I do, at least I'm spending these couple of hours every week, not every day. The reason why I haven't deleted all of my social media apps is because I need a social media presence for work. I usually have to get on social media for some part of my day, and it really helps to set an intention before opening my social media app. For example, maybe I'm opening the app to respond to a message or to research ideas for a new video. If I'm not careful, I can very easily get distracted, and I have been many times. Setting an intention before scrolling is my way to avoid mindless browsing. Even setting a timer to have a physical reminder that the task shouldn't take more than a certain number of minutes is really helpful to keep me on track. This hack can help us get in and out of the app within 5 minutes if we know what we're opening the social media app to do. And that's as compared to tacking on an extra 20 minutes of scrolling mindlessly. I have found that turning off notifications can greatly decrease the number of times I check my phone throughout my day. The fewer times I check my phone, the less likely I am to tap into an app where I start doom scrolling. I generally mute notifications for most apps, but if I really want to focus, I will turn on Do Not Disturb, or I'll put my phone on airplane mode. If we still need to be reachable by certain people, we can always allow notifications from specific contacts in Do Not Disturb mode. In cutting down my time scrolling and consuming content, I have started thinking about ways I could be more creative. When I think about creating, my mind goes to a whole spectrum of things that we can create. Creating content is an option. We can be crafty and paint or color or draw. Cooking is a form of creating too. If at the end of your creation you've turned one form of something into another, it can really boost our sense of purpose and accomplishment. The more we get excited about creating, the more we might be inclined to set goals around being creative. That could be a weekly blog post where we update a community on our learnings. Maybe it's a daily sketch or making a video a week. These goals can help us continue flexing this creative muscle, and in turn, it encourages problem solving, emotional expression, and it builds confidence. I would argue these are tangible benefits we get instead of mindlessly scrolling on our phones. And if you choose to share your creations on social media, then it becomes a platform to share your work and connect with other similar people rather than getting lost in consuming other people's content. And social media aside, even if we're just creating for ourselves, that's still an activity that we can do mindfully and get enjoyment out of. Reading a book instead of doom scrolling is perhaps my favorite way to cultivate a calmer, more focused mind. I love being immersed in a continuous story or subject. I think it's just a much better alternative to the somewhat fragmented nature of social media. I have always been a reader, at some points in my life more voraciously than others. I will say I have never felt anxious after reading a book in the way that I sometimes feel after doom scrolling. My favorite part of reading is that with a book, we're in control of what we consume. There's no algorithm guiding us toward sensationalized or stressful content. Choosing and reading a book is a very deliberate act, unlike the random pieces of content that appear on my For You page. Reading also allows us to choose topics that match our mood or interests, which I think allows us to curate a healthier mental diet. Reading is also a great wind down bedtime activity. There was definitely one point in my life where doom scrolling was an evening habit, but I've since replaced that with reading to calm my mind. And I find that it's one factor that has subtly improved my sleep quality. And as a result of that, being well rested makes a huge difference in how I am able to show up for myself the next day. Boredom often drives us to mindlessly reach for our phones to scroll through endless content to fill the void. I used to always feel a need to fill the void. If not by scrolling, then maybe putting on a podcast, an audiobook, or listening to music. But recently, I've learned to let myself start to sit with that discomfort of silence and allow my brain to wander. It's such a stark contrast to all of the entertainment that we have at our fingertips, and it's nice to have a baseline to get back to. This is the time I can practice mindfulness or just make mental notes of what I want to do for the day. I might think about future video ideas, maybe jot down any thoughts I might have or questions I want to answer later. Whenever I have this unstructured time where I don't feel the pressure to do something to feel productive, it helps me be more present, and it gives my brain a much needed break from all of the stimulation that it constantly gets. So those are the 6 tips that have really helped me cut down on a lot of the doom scrolling I used to do. I delete any addicting app temporarily that I don't need. I'll re-download it to catch up occasionally. I set an intention before opening a social media app, and a time or two, if necessary, to hold me accountable. I'll turn off notifications so I don't feel drawn to pick up my phone arbitrarily. I also think about creating, whether it be writing in a journal, cooking, being crafty, whatever it may be, and this takes me out of a consumption mindset and into a creative one. I'll read a book, which puts me more in control of the content that I'm consuming, and I embrace being bored. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, I think you would really like these 10 micro habits I share that actually improve my life.